house would allow minors to access reproductive health services, including contraception, without parental consent. This house would allow minors to access reproductive health services, including contraception, without parental consent. We'll read to you the finals panel. As it is the norm at this specific championship, we will have an 11-man panel that will decide on the fate in this round. The first person that will be joining this panel is a breaking team at the World Schools Debate Championship. They broke this year. They're also the first East African team to break at the championship. Put your hands together for Raima Muhammad. Let's clap for Raima Muhammad as she steps in. Raima Muhammad. So that is Raima Muhammad, the first person on the panel. Please come up front. The next person that will be joining the finals panel is all the way from Kenya, a mentor from Oration Hub, an eloquent judge as well, Rachel Ngochi. Okay, the next person that will be joining the panel, we look at draw, but from the feedback as well, we all agreed that the semi-finalists from the National Debate Council 2023, Magog Raymond, makes the panel. Let's have Magog Raymond. Give him a round of applause. The next person joining this panel as well is the novice champion at the Chambogo University Debate Open, as well Rona Namudu. Philomena. Let's put it up for Philomena. The next person that will be joining the panel is a 2-time University Debate Nationals champion, 2022 and 2021 back to back. He's also the best judge at the last year's edition. That is none other than Simon Luswata. Okay. The next person that will be joining this panel, she is Masuja Open and the Kwame Nkrumah University ESL champion, none other than Apili Cynthia. Let's put it up for Cynthia. He has won Kenya University Debate Championship. He is also the Deputy Chief Adjudicator at the Olympian 2024 Invitational Tournament. Put your hands up for Kimani Kirabu, all the way from Kenya. Okay. The cup will be joining this panel. Rahim is a pre-N1 All-Nigerian Youth Debate Championship. He's also won the South African Grad Competition 2024. Rahim Kiverango, your able DCA. The equity chair will be joining this panel just for purposes of equity. He's a 2-time finalist of the University Debate National Championship back-to-back 2022 and 2021, none other than Xavier Arinda Biamfisha. I'll introduce myself and have the finals chair. My name is Rain Joash Maronga, the African Nationals Debate League finals chair and an RPDA finalist. And now, yeah, clap on me. Okay, and finally, we have Lawel, who will chair this specific panel. Lawel is the champion of the Uganda Debate Association InterVarsity Debates. He's a 2-time invitational finalist at the Olympia back-to-back. Let's have Lawel chair this panel. My work here is done. I'll hand over to the finals chair to deliberate on this round.
Once again, congratulations upon reaching the finals. My name is Lawal. Once again, I'm going to be your chair. Just to remind you of the time, you will have 5 minutes for the first speeches and 4 minutes for the subsequent speeches, right? Cross-examination is 1 minute. Thank you so much. Cynthia is going to be your timekeeper and she will tell you how she's going to keep time.
Okay, so at the first minute, I will raise my hand and show you that it is 1 minute. At the last minute, I will raise my hand as well. When your time is up, you'll hear the alarm go off. And you will not have prep time in between the rounds.
Maybe first affirmative, you could read the motion first.
Okay, this house would allow minors to access reproductive health services, including contraception, without parental consent.
I'm going to request everyone in the audience to maintain maximum silence. Guys at the back, let's have maximum silence as a sign of respect. Let's start.
Okay, so a little bit of introduction. My name is Omani Walter. I'll be doing the opening speech for Side Affirmative, which is Ntare School. Also a bit of context on that is I'd like to appreciate a lot of the people that put in a lot of effort towards bringing us here. To my amazing coach, the beautiful lady that was having creative business yesterday, I thank you so much for that, and I thank you for all the effort that you put in within that. I appreciate all the teams that put in effort, and to King's College Bodo for the immense effort that their particular debate team put in, and I beg the administration to sort of give initiative toward that kind of cause. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay, this house would allow minors to access reproductive health services, including contraception without parental consent. I think it is very important to understand the context of the debate, which is on the idea of health services. The debate is not to say on whether health services are most probably effective or whether we have them in the first place. The debate is to say, imagine perfect effectibility of the health services or imagining health services at their best. Would we then associate minors to first seek parental consent or to go for the health services? We then establish that and think it is something that needs to move throughout the debate. But then also too, on the idea of most probably sex drive or sort of, sex intuitive thought in that particular idea. We think that at a point in time like this, where minors are most probably maybe promiscuous in that particular sense, it is wrong for us to argue that in negative side of the world, we then solve that problem. We think in the 21st century, most probably because of certain things like modernity, teenagers are very sexually active, and those are things that exist in the real world in both cases. I think we need to go to the idea of minors. It is wrong for us to assert that every minor is not maybe rational or cannot make a good decision. It is entirely wrong for us to categorize and generalize the idea that minors are maybe just not dumb enough to then come up with the right decision. But then also too, on the idea that minors must probably have a right to their own bodies. It is important for us to understand the minorities in this particular sense. Minors are people who go through real life problems, who have teenage pregnancies, and these things affect them in that sort of way. They also have a responsibility and a right to their own bodies. It is wrong for us to deny people a right to protect their health and then give them sort of the best ways to achieve certain things in that particular sense. But then also on the idea of particularly the importance of this autonomy. I think this autonomy most probably gives minors a sort of responsibility or then gives them a sort of sense of what it looks like to go through real world problems. I think giving them or making them go through parental consent, even when the parent says no, does not shield the existence of this idea. The idea exists, and if you protect minors from those sort of things, they will find them even later on when they are not minors probably. But then also too, on the idea of maybe the people that we're looking at in this debate, I I think the generalization of minors does not segregate people who do not have parents. I think people who do not have parents are people who also need to be taken care of on this particular debate. And then also another ground of establishment is on particularly what parents are like. I think it is wrong for us to assert that parents are maybe utopian and have the best ideas in hand. I think at a point in time where girls become pregnant and their parents' best solution is to marry the girls off, instead of sort of giving them, sort of health services for the betterment of themselves, it means that most probably some parents seek societal justification for their acts. Parents want to look like the best people or want to paint a certain image even at the expense of what the future of their child could most probably hold. And that is wrong. But then also too, on the idea that people do not have parents and how those people are sort of then left out in that particular sense. But then also on the idea that most probably when you sort of create the sort of scenario where minors have to sort of seek interest or consent from their parents, you make it feel like this sort of thing exists in the real world. In the real world today, it is very hard for parents to engage in conversations as much as sex education to minors in a particular sense. These are things that are very important topics and parents are not actively engaging in. What that creates today is that children sort of do not have the ability or even incentive to tell their parents maybe what sort of steps they are taking sexually. That idea is a concept that exists. So the clarity on most probably why children would most probably even seek parental consent in the first place is something we need to draw on. The problem is that children are sort of scared that the parents could lash out on them or even throw them out or disregard them for any sort of thing that then puts them in immoral positions. That is wrong, because when children make mistakes, it is most probably human to error. And when you blame people for things that most probably A, are not their fault in cases of rape, but then also two, things that even happen to adults in that sense, it is still wrong. But then also the idea of reproductive health services. Reproductive health services could include contraception, but not probably limited to that. These are things that include active advice to particular people. These are things that include advice on even the basic things of reproductive health and how to stay healthy in that particular regard. These are things that are important for minors, and these are things that parents have failed to do particularly. Parents are maybe too shy to engage with minors in that sort of sexual conversation, and we need expertise in that regard. We show you that particularly we need to protect the vulnerable people in this particular sense, and then even what happens when parents seek consent in that particular regard. If children fail to seek consent, or if parents say no, it is then down to the child to pick up the own incentive to fight for themselves against the parents' will. We then make the argument that what the parent advises is not particularly what is going to happen at the end of that day. It is wrong for us to say that the parent is going to tell the child yes, because most probably parents are not utopian in nature, but then also even if the parent says no, it then gives the child the option to look for most probably, pre-substitute sort of measures. It gives children the option to look for things that could not be the best of options. Children go for illegal measures, which are maybe cheaper in that particular regard. Cross-examination.
Thank you so much, Speaker. Could you please define a minor in your case?
Okay. I think a minor is someone under 18, doesn't rule out.
Thank you so much. What is the problem in status quo?
The problem is that minors are having real-world problems and we're doing nothing about it because they are too scared to talk to their parents about it.
Thank you. Define parental consent.
Please?
Define parental consent.
Okay. So parental consent in characterization would look like asking your parents to do something and they say yes or no. The problem is that some parents could say no when it is very important.
Thank you.
So before I begin my speech, I'd like to thank Holy Cross Lakeview for the efforts they put in us during the practice. Right now we are on the finals. We want to say shout out to our patron, Mr. Ijanai, and to also the person who brought us, Mr. Kampa, and to also my teammates that made it to the finals. So before I begin my debate in 3, 2, 1. So dear panel, today's debate states that this House would allow minors to access reproductive health services, including contraception, without parental consent. But what are we trying to look at as Team Affirmative presented in their case? Team Affirmative came and failed to define for us a minor. Then in the cross-examination, they defined a minor as a person below the age of 18. But then let us try to characterize for you the person below the age of 18 that they talked about as a minor. These are people who can't actually decide for their own. These are people that the Ugandan the Ugandan government sets a consent age of 18. That means that age is when you're able to decide for yourself. So that thing of them saying or trying to assert that these people can decide for themselves, the Constitution already shows it that they can't consent for themselves. Then for us as team, they came here and said that this resolution looks to see whether these people are going to be getting health services. But they said we don't need to see either these services are going to be good or not. But this is not something we need to just assume in their case. We need to look at, we need to necessitate safety of these children when they go to these reproductive health services without the parental consent. So this is something what we need not to necessitate. As team affirmative, they came here in a policy resolution and failed to give us a policy of how they are going to solve the problems in the status quo. As team affirmative, they told us how they are going to solve the problem in status quo is that the youths are facing a lot of challenges that actually need to be solved. But they don't give us a policy of how they're going to be solved, and then they just give us the not having parental consent. But then let's look at the pharmacies that are not licensed, or how are they going to be able to know that these children are getting these services from the right person, or these children are getting the services that deserve them. So we want to look at the parents who parental consent. They say a parent, you need to get consent from your parents. So look at the people on the youth on streets that don't have parents, like in their case, that don't have anyone to consent to, or like they say. So how are they going to? Okay, to leave that alone, they told us in parental consent. For us as team negative, we define parental consent as anyone you can get consent from in schools, at home, who this person has a responsibility of you. They can take care of you when you're in a burden. So we as team negative want to look at that these problems actually face the child. Yeah, they face the child, but then they hurt the parents more. These parents are meant to see their children survive in the world, but look at the situation where the person, so they came and told us they're making it a policy, or they would allow minors to go for reproductive health services. But really, abortion is a common reproductive service. So they are making these people go for abortion without consent from their parents. And when this person dies, who is going to be held accountable in the government of Uganda, whereby abortion is not legalized? So who is going to be held accountable? The parent who is actually caring for this person. So let's look at what they came and told us. So they came and told us that these people, the young people, fear to tell their parents. But why should they fear? If you're having a genuine reason, you have a genuine reason of education, and you actually, the parents are giving it to you. So if you have a genuine reason, or a reason of circumstances that may happen, if you don't know, then send it to your parents. You may expect kidnapped, you may experience on the road, and they are going to allow you because it is a genuine reason, and they have the consent to you. So they came and told us, we want to look at the gap that will be created between a child and a parent in their case. We look at when someone goes for reproductive health services. Let's look at how Ugandan parents are seeing this thing. They are seeing it as a negative case. But for us in team negative, we come with a policy of sensitization. To sensitize the ignorant parents that they talk about, to sensitize even the parents who see reproductive health as a negative impact, so that when the parents are sensitized and they know this, they will be able to allow the children to go for it, because they know it is for their benefit. They know, but look at a situation where it has been left, whereby a child is going to go, let's say in schools, and it has been said without parental consent. So in a school, someone can easily get out and they are receiving to the administration that is because of a reproductive health services. But they're going to join robbery, they're going to do other things out there, and then like reproductive health without consent. But with consent, you're able to tell the teachers, I'm going for reproductive health services. And with consent, you're going to get someone to escort you to those services. So when these contraceptives hurt you, or the contraceptives you use don't enable you to give birth later, who is going to be affected? It's your parents. All the effects, all the costs, we realize the contraceptives are expensive, so the costs go back to the parents. So we as team negative want to say that our arguments, we stand on the argument that says that parents have full responsibility over their children to live and influence the decisions they make. Number two is that parents offer psychological and emotional support to minors when accessing reproductive health services. Then parents are able to pay reproductive health services which are expensive. With that, I beg to submit.
Okay, speaker. would you tell your parent that you start to have sex every weekend?
So in your policy, you're legalizing sex activities, which is not actually morality.
The question is, would you tell your parent that you're going to have sex over the weekend?
For me, I would tell my parents that I may be raped on the way and I need contraception, but not sex every day.
Okay. So, who would be more informed between the parents and the medics?
They will all be informed because the parents are sensitized in our policy, and the medical facilities will be licensed.
What degree of sensitization would make them equal to doctors?
Pardon?
What degree of sensitization would give them the knowledge that doctors have? Taking them to class and to study biology or something?
No, we have that community initiatives that help to sensitize this. That means sensitization is going to happen and it's going to be over higher degree because they are hiring experts.
So the question is, if the parents say yes, right, then does it stand in today's debate or debating where they say no?
Yeah, it stands.
Before you have the next speaker, I'm going to ask you kindly, and I know because you're human beings with a fully functioning conscience, you know what it means to keep quiet, right? Please keep quiet, at least for the respect of those that have made it to the finals. Thank you so much.
Also, I'll just say I hit the shout out. First, God who has helped me be here, then my father, my patron, and my beloved coach, Barack. This house would allow minors to access reproductive health services, including contraception, without parental consent. The burden on opposition of side of the house is to show us why, even children, when they are so disadvantaged, they need parental consent. On our side of the house, we tell you that first, we think that because parents have low connection with their children, parents in that kind of sense have much control over their children. In that kind of particular regard, children fear to talk to their parents, but even in instances of vulnerability and households where there is existence of violence, we think that children in that kind of particular regard are then not subjected to talk to their particular parents. What we do is that we have two questions to cross up then in today's debate. One, to what extent do we prioritize certain individuals' rights? Personal autonomy over parents' authority. We think that personal autonomy is characterized as a right to which an extent an individual should have that kind of particular right. A right to be respected is that you make a decision for your own self. The decision you make is for your own good. Experience of that kind of particular decision, informed decision, is acquired when an individual is able to make decisions that have experience in that kind of particular regard. When individuals can talk to counselors, when we then opt individuals to go and talk to people or health personnel, we do not need them to go to their parents and do all that kind of stuff. What is necessary in today's debate is whether an individual can make a good decision that will amount to them to a good health reproductive service. We think that a person who can only provide a good health reproductive service advice is a medical personnel for those kinds of particular reasons. If the medical personnel can give them like the kind of advice they need to derive the best outcomes, we then ask a question. To what guarantee do you expect us to say that parental consent would derive the best outcomes? So we then say that even in that kind of particular regard, even when parental consent still exists, we do not get a clarified reason as to why we still think that we can derive the best outcomes. Second, we reduce unwanted pregnancies and STIs. Access with immediacy ensure proper education and informed choices. We think that whenever parents are most likely not existing, children have less access to their parents in that kind of particular regard. This is a simple classic that has always been running on social media. That we always spend 9 months at school and 3 months with our parents. That is to say that even in the particular workspace we live, we have no access to our parents much as we live individually. So our life is more dependent on us, even our parents are just there for guidance. What then we do is that the individual life we have, we attach it more on how we learn certain things in different societies. So if we have to learn things and experience, we then say that education is derived and the best interests are derived when individuals are able to make their particular decisions that are independent. The problem with opposition side of us is that if you then still attach consent to specific things like that, is that firstly, we have a problem with that. They then talk of things like abortion. Abortion in Uganda is an illegal right, so it is out of context. But even if it was in context, we think that because abortion in and of itself is a right that an individual possesses, when it is in the best interest of a child to most likely access abortion, most probably when they are first raped, when a parent cannot consent to that kind of decision because they fear societal backlash, we think that it impinges on a right on an individual's right. That is to say, that if an individual is access abortion because of the rape circumstances that come along with it, parents might not want to consent to that because they fear societal backlash, and the reasons why society normally says that as a parent you allow your child to go for abortion, they have a shame upon you. Secondly, we think that then again, earlier we talk about the early access of young employees to about self-awareness and responsibility. The clash of the debate then comes to health service, health safety, dignity versus control over fear. So for us on our side, we prioritize individuals accessing health services easier with their autonomy versus control of the parent and the fear to access.
Speaker, it's your right to ask for accountability from leaders, right?
Perfect.
Then should it cause you to go to riot or the better way of practicing your right?
I don't get why that is in context.
Do they have two differences of practicing your right?
No.
When you're rioting, you're asking for accountability, not so?
Yes.
And is it a better way to confront your leaders and ask them in a good way? Thank you. Then, does parental consent remove the rights a minor have?
Yes, perfect. Because parental consent means to control.
But when you confront the leaders, you still have the right to ask for accountability, not
To
so?
answer your first question, I said that parental consent is control and fear, which impinges on your right of making assessment.
Can decisions of how to practice your right, for example, asking for accountability, be influenced by the advice from people?
Yes, because parents care about societal backlash. The existence of societal backlash means that the decision they make is always dependent on what society thinks, not what the child wants.
Panel, my speech begins in 3, 2, 1. Resolved. So basically, right from the cross-examination that was actually given to the precurrent speaker over here from Team Affirmative, he was actually asked whether whether the decisions of a right can actually be influenced by advice, which he clearly agrees to. So we actually see that at the end of the day, if these individuals or these minors are actually getting this consent or this advice from their parents, it is actually going to help them to access these reproductive health services that are actually going to be beneficial for them at the end of the day. So we see that they actually come and cross over to our side and actually agree with our entire case. So actually, dear panel, what else that we get from them when they're actually asking our speaker in the cross-examination is they come here and ask whether they come and prove to us that they're instead going to legalize these sexual activities, because we see that in their context, if they actually want these minors to actually not be accessing this kind of parental consent, we see that if these minors actually have that mindset that we can access this without actually having this kind of parental consent, then they know at the end of the day it's something normal. They won't suffer any repercussions, so they're actually going to go and keep on having these sexual activities because they know at the end of the day we're not going to suffer any kinds of negative impacts or any kinds of repercussions. So finally, he also asks how sensitization will actually make these parents equal to how the doctors actually have their level of understanding. And we actually tell you that these parents, we believe, have already also undergone these kinds of sexual changes. So at the end of the day, they actually know what their children are going through. All we need is to sensitize them about these modern kinds of contraceptive methods, actually these reproductive health services, to actually equip them with much more knowledge, because we believe that if they have gone through it, then they actually know what their children are going through and what their children have actually experienced. So they come here and actually talk about abortion being illegal. So we actually see that if they actually agree that if this abortion is illegal and if it is also part of these reproductive health services, and they want these minors to actually access these services without parental consent, we see at the end of the day, they just want these minors to actually suffer the repercussions. Because if they're actually going to abort, it might actually lead to loss of life. So we see that this actually still goes back to the parents, and the parent who is actually the main stakeholder, and and even the minor is actually the one going to suffer the most at the end of the day, with even the financial challenges that will be faced by even the parents. So we actually see that over 20 million minors in developing countries get pregnant every year, and only 12 million of them actually give birth. So the remaining, we actually see that these remaining either die or actually have to suffer with the consequences of not getting parental consent. So this is actually because they are not actually allowed to access this kind of parental consent, that they are actually going to make these bad choices that will later lead to the harmful impact on both the minor and even the parents. Because we see that at the end of the day, the side effects are not going to affect only the minor, but even the parents will be affected at the end of the day. Because if this minor has actually not told the parents what they're actually going to do, we believe that the parents is actually still going to have to pay back for the finances that are actually going to be used when this minor is going to access these services. And so we see that this is still going to put a financial burden onto the parents. So we're actually trying to see that we need to take the responsibility of these parents to decide for the minors, because we believe that these parents actually have the control over these minors. So we did not actually understand how they come and talk about how this is going to infringe on their rights if the parents actually have the control over these minors, because we believe that a parent wants what's best for their child. So if actually a parent refuses this child, if they come to consent from going for this reproductive service, because we have sensitized them, so if they refuse you from actually going for that service, then we see that the parent actually knows what the best interest of the child is. And if they actually agree, then they actually still know what their child is going to access, the reproductive health service, and what benefit it will actually be to the child. And then we also see that if there is actually loss in the trust with parents and these minors, there's actually also going to be a weakening of the child-parental bond. And according to this, we can also see that the service providers have an upper hand. We beg to submit.
Okay, I hope you answered the questions in a very demonstrable way. Question 1. Do you think sex activities are okay in both sides of the world? Again, do you think sensitization solves the idea of sexual activities?
I beg your pardon?
Do you think sexual activities are as a result of sex urge or as a result of better medical services?
We think that they're actually as a result of the sex urge.
Cool. So do you do anything to stop sex urge?
Yes, we do anything. We actually do something to stop sex urge, because we actually see that if these minors go and consent from their parents, they are going to get the advice, and that's what you actually put to us in your case, that they actually won't have any kind of legal advice to actually access these kinds of reproductive health services.
Are important for citizens or for individuals to live good lives, then what happens when the parent declines consent?
I beg your pardon?
If the importance of reproductive health services is true, then what happens when the parent says no?
We actually told you, if we sensitize these parents, they are going to know what is right for their child. So by the time they actually tell their child not to access reproductive services, we actually see that they know what is the best interest for their child, so they actually won't tell their child to access something that actually doesn't make it better.
Guys, let's have silence in the audience, and let's also stick within the time limits allocated in the debate, right? And let's listen to each other. Guys at the back, you're capable of keeping quiet. Please, let's exercise that potential.
Okay, for the shout outs, I think I'll just shout out to anyone who loves me and tell them that I love them. So fun. This is one of the debates where you go to your side and you're like, oh my God, they'll decide. Today's debate is a debate on consent, right? The idea of saying yes or no, it is not a debate on advice. It is not a debate on whether you should ask your parent or not. It is a debate on whether if you ask your parent and your parent is like no, should you proceed or you should not. So in an instance maybe where the parent is sensitized or knows about this and says yes, that is ruled out of the debate because there is consent. Today's debate limits us to a situation where there is directly no consent. That's what they need to debate, but they just go irrelevant anyways. They discuss a debate of minors, right? They say minors necessarily can't make good decisions. So if minors can't make good decisions, this means they are most likely going to be influenced by their peers, right? So in sense, they agree to the fact that the minors are most likely going to make bad decisions, right? So when they make bad decisions, the decision is already made. Then what happens? in their world, the reproductive health services are not there, right? But in our side, they are there. So in our side of the house, the children, in sense, are protected. For example, they give us very good statistics, so I won't go into the trouble. These kids, because they have contraceptives, the chances of getting pregnant become less. Because they have things like condoms, they are protected. But in their side of the house, because there is no parental consent, they want to do it anyways. Because they are irrational, they do it without the protection. But in our side of the house, they have the protection anyways. But I think it's very irrelevant to run a case that says that the harms are more to the parent than to the child. I think the child who dies during the abortion suffers more harm because she's not even there anyways. And again, sensitization. We think sensitization, that cannot work with this debate. Even cross-examination, they contact the fact that even if you train a parent for 5 years, he cannot match to the knowledge of a doctor. In our first speech, we tell you that reproductive health services include contraception, but they are not limited to that. Even things like advice come in. So even if you sensitize, we don't think that is something that can take away our side anyway. But let's look at the right to their bodies. We think minors need the right to their bodies, right? But the fact of the matter is, even if you didn't give them the right, what happens? You cannot put them in jail. They will still control their bodies. So the idea is, if they then control their bodies, are they self-controlling their bodies? That's what we run in today's debate. Because you do not put the chain on their reproductive parts, right? So what you can do is make sure they are protected. But let's say they say good services, right? They urge that from their side of the house, the parents can maybe support you and you get good services. But Pano notice that this all occurs in a world where there is consent. It does not occur in a world where there is no consent. But let's look at a world where it is legalized. In a world where it is legalized, that means you can go to the hospital and get relatively good services. But where it is not legalized, that means you have to go for other options. If your parent doesn't want you to abort, but you want to do it, you resort to other measures. This is where you go for cheap products and maybe things that are harmful. Maybe you go to people who are not that qualified, and that is how you end up dying in the first place. On our side of the house, we reduce all this, even if the parent didn't agree. But from our first case, we characterize parents who are not ideal, right? We have parents who are drunkards or maybe uninformed or anything like that. So what happens to these kids, right? We think from our side of the house, we cater for them more, right? Then on the concept of engagement, I think they do not engage on anything we say. We tell them the point of kids fearing their parents. Very few kids are going to come up to their parents and be like, Daddy, I want to have sex, right? So in an instance where they do not, they need to be protected anyway. So even if they ask, we think that is completely relevant to our side. Because today's debate doesn't have consent. And to remind them, maybe in their third speech, they can try to save their dead case or maybe bury it. It is about consent, not advice. So for as long as you go to your parent, he can give you as much advice as he wants. But when you think the advice is not relevant, what do? You go for the illegal measures or you do the right thing. Thank you. I beg to raise our case. Proud of all.
I begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Now, panel, today's debate, you are actually clashing on mainly consent. Team Ahoma TV comes and mainly talks about consent, and us in our world looks at mainly saying no. But consent is whether I say yes or no, not mainly only looking at no, which is what they fail to understand. Now, we realize in their world they're actually legalizing sexual activities. If a teenager is actually going for sexual activities, we realize teenagers are actually going to be involved in teenage pregnancies, and of which they're going to be forced to go for abortion. When they go for abortion, they're actually going to be they're going to get health complications in the long run. And with statistics, we have to realize 35% of teenage girls in 2022 die or get health complications because of this. Now, they go for abortion because they don't get the consent from their parents. Now, if they're not getting the consent from their parents, that means they're actually going to continue worsening with their reproductive health. This is what they were looking for. No, they don't actually understand on this. Now, we actually want to explain them what reproductive health services are. Reproductive health services can be a variety, not only just what contraceptives. They can actually even be the guidance, the counseling that actually comes in this one, but they don't understand of this. Now, a minor here, actually define a minor as someone who is below the age of 18 years. That means this person still is under the parent's consent. And the parent is someone who has control over this child or a minor. And let me give you a variety of parents. Take an example, they even come and talk about how children can be in school for 9 months. But we'd like to tell you about this, when these children actually at school, their child actually become their parents. Now, when their child become their parents, that means they can go to their child and actually get the consent that they should actually be getting this information. Now, they come and talk about how doctors have better knowledge than the parents or anything like that. But look at that, actually, some doctors here actually need the money. So how sure that these doctors are actually going to be able to give the right information to these people? Why can't the parent consent and be like, don't go to this doctor, go to this other doctor because I did so I can actually give you this information? You will go to the wrong doctor and they give you wrong information because doctor is actually aiming at looking for money. This is what you're looking for, that you're promoting the problem in status quo, but you fail to understand your things. Now they come and tell us that medical services are actually all legalized. But don't tell that yes, they are all legalized, but they all give out the right information. No. We realize most of this information here is actually wrong. We realize these girls that are involved in abortion, that are going for these small services where they're actually getting medical complications in their own life, affecting their reproductive health. This is what we're not looking for. Now they come and tell us that children can actually be able to pick these reproductive health services. That means children, actually this actually is going to affect the parents in the long run because there's just reproductive health service that is actually for free. These reproductive health services even need money. Even the guidance and counseling itself needs money. How can a minor go to these people without the money? How is he going to be able to get any of this information? We realize this still it comes back to the parent because the parent has to give them the consent so they can be able to go and get what they are looking for, but they still feel understanding of this. They can come and clarify to us that there's actually a gap between parents and the children. But realize if actually this consent comes about, the parents actually going to be able to actually build the gap between the parents. They realize the problems that their kids actually going through, and then they'll be able to solve the problem in the long run. But then they still feel understand this. Now they can come and tell us that the two parties here, that's the parent and the minor, actually affected. Now the two parties, if the two parties here are actually affected, which is the minor and the parent, then that means the two parties need to decide because it's actually affecting both of them. If the two parties it's actually affecting them, that means they have to come and decide and come to a conclusion of what is right for both of them. Because realize if these children here, the minors, after going for these reproductive services without even the consent of their parents, they're actually going to get the money. Realize after this actually is coming back to the parents, being abandoned to the parents because the kids don't even have the money, but then they still fail to understand of this. Now the even come and tell us that pregnant girls get married, but realize that the parents force the pregnant girls to get married because of this, because they don't have the consent. If this child here went to the parent and told it at the time they have sex, then this parent have actually given him consent of whether doing it or not, because you realize that actually you get pregnant in the at the end of it all, but then they still fail to understand the end of this. Then they still come and ask us whether we ask our parents whether we want to have sex over the weekend. But realize actually they are promoting that sexual activities, actually legalizing them, but realize sexual activities actually not necessary. That I beg to submit. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that.
That was one of the best that we could have in this NSDC, and moving forward, we wait to hear the results. At this particular moment, I want to request that we all pay attention. Let's take a moment. Yes, a moment of quietness. Great. I know when a debate is heated, after it, people have to still debate. Yes. I want to take the pleasure to welcome our keynote speaker tonight. And let's put our hands together to welcome Mr. Ahimsiwe Ham, the headmaster of Mbarara High School. Let's welcome him with the hands up. Please, let's clap for a keynote speech.
like the chief adjudicator a little while ago said, when we are grooming the future communicators and influencers of our society, we expect one of the virtues to be paying attention, because listening is an integral part of the skill of communication. The chief guest, the host head teacher, that is present, my beloved chairman of the National Debate Council, and my long-time colleague with your executive, the debate judges, the patrons and coaches, students assembled here, the media personnel, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me first to introduce myself once again. My name is Ham Ayimisiwe, a teacher and currently with the responsibility of heading Mbarara High School. I'm particularly impressed by the trend of debate in the country as steered by our National Debate Council that was founded in 2009. I'm deeply honored to have this rare opportunity to interact with you today in this 12th session of the National Schools Debate Championship. Ladies and gentlemen, as I reflect with gratitude on the humble beginning of this national debate tournament way back in 2009, where we gathered at Green Hill College here in Kampala, and I had the privilege of participating as a coach and patron at the same time for Mbarara High School, the pioneer champions for the National Debate Championships. In 2014, I recollect, we were here participating in the Champions of Champions tournament. Still, I was the coach and patron, and I'm glad to recall that Mbarara High School was able to become the first champion of the champions. We give the glory to God. I should, on a more personal note, brag a little that the first class of 20 coaches to train in Seta Mukono, I had Mr. Gustavus Kakaye here, and now the chairman of the National Debate Council. Congratulations for coming on this way. My presentation is to be brief so that we don't tire you more, especially as you await the results of this grand final that we just had. Join me and we appreciate the National Debate Council, Uganda, for the great contribution it has made towards the development of debate in our schools and in all corners of Uganda. We can give them a clap. I'm sincerely grateful that NDC has invited me in recognition of my contribution, not as an individual, but as one of the group towards the development of debate in our country. And especially that debate has now spread from secondary schools to universities, and even to primary schools, where you had the preliminary round of finals before the very final. Ladies and gentlemen, my presentation will be focusing on 3 major areas. 1, the value of education in personal and national development. 2, the urgent need for educated youth to take action in restoring and protecting the environment. And 3, a call for transparency, accountability, and integrity to combat corruption, which has become an ever-growing challenge in our society. I understand very well over the years, these ideas have become the dominant themes of our debate tournament. Comrades, I acknowledge the powerful statement by Malcolm Forbes, and I quote, "Education's purpose is to replace an empty mind with an open mind." As debaters, we are taught to listen to divergent views and critically analyze them in order to improve ourselves and our own learning. Debate is not just about sharing ideas, but about preparing ourselves for the best possible choices and improving the quality of education in our country. Allow me to add this, and this is for the youth. It is one wonderful thing to come here and debate well, become so persuasive as a speaker, but if we are to develop and if you are to sustain and protect your own country in the future, where possible we shall not be around, I pray you don't just talk, but you also act. Therefore, I humbly appeal to every youth to learn to be productive as an eventual benefit of debate. What you say should translate into your own action if Uganda is to develop. Because we shall not develop by words, we shall develop by deeds. We must appreciate the efforts of the Open Society Institute for East Africa. To most debaters here, that sounds very distant and historical, but I would elaborate a little that way back in 2009 and 2010, the National Debate Tournament was sponsored by the Open Society Institute for East Africa, and later it was handed over entirely for the management of all debates in the country by the National Debate Council. Therefore, we must forever remain thankful to NBC for reaching all the corners of Uganda. Because as I speak now, and as I read the invitation letters, all corners of Uganda have been reached by NBC to mobilize for the national event. Therefore, at this point, this national debate tournament bears a full national element. Let's give another clap to the organizers. And by the way, those regional tournaments you organize have helped almost every school to participate, because it is not easy going for the nationals, going for the finals, but at least every school has a grand opportunity to participate in debate tournament from their own regions. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "The function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically, and that bears an element of debate. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education." We must recognize that debate is a valuable method in our education system, one that cultivates critical thinking, one that cultivates intelligence and noble character, qualities that every educated citizen should exhibit. I wanted to make a comment about the most blessed house for debates in the country and how we often get a contradiction where sometimes words are insufficient and action on the floor makes the drama. But I have reservations because these are our leaders. May I therefore appeal to you to avoid that kind of trend because it defeats the very logic of being good debaters. Our country needs more responsible citizens who can propel it forward. This is why the government is investing heavily in education. And I'm aware that even that heavy investment is insufficient. But I hasten to add, that is why your own families are sacrificing greatly to ensure that you get education. Maybe, even in their absence, I request you to clap your hands for the parents who cater for your education. Education is actually one of the most expensive investments whose results are not so immediate. And it takes a very patient participant like you, a very patient parent or investor for that matter, to have education move on in our country. It is not a joking subject which we should take for granted. My honest appeal to you is that the education we acquire, the debate we hold here, is not merely for superficial knowledge. Being good at the time, it should be able to transform your character. Education should shape you into dependable individuals with strong values and productive engagement in society. The former president of the US, Barack Obama, wisely said, I quote, and this is for you: education is not just a degree or a certificate to be shown to others as a proof. Education is the name of our attitude, our actions, our language, and behavior with others in real life. I am very impressed by the government as an educationist that we are now adopting the revised lower secondary curriculum, where people must be productive and where character must be shaped through education. The statement above compels us to emphasize the moral obligation of every educated Ugandan to actively combat corruption. I was briefly requested to hit on corruption, and I just have a statement on this. Ironically, it is often the uneducated citizens who are perceived to be most averse to corruption, yet they are not in charge of public affairs. We, the educated, are. Perhaps, if they were also to be in charge, they would do us. But the idea is, having got an education that should transform your character, you should never lament of the evil of corruption, because you as an individual has the capacity and the knowledge to combat the same problem. The challenge is, all these offices are occupied by the educated, but the problem has continued to grow. So as you debate, remember, you don't debate for the sake of it, you debate to transform your minds, and therefore approach the matter as if it were your own. fight starts with an individual anyway. When all is said and done, we must align the knowledge and exposure we gain, such as the insights shared at this grand debate, with the work we do and the services we offer. It is only through this alignment that we can truly contribute to the development of ourselves as individuals and to the progress of our country. The challenges we face as a country are not limited to corruption, but even mismanagement of the environment, whose effects are very, very biting. Look back at how you behave and relate with the environment. As an individual, do you really do your part, or you wait to be ordered? We've had debaters talk about the consent, then the law, then. But even without the parents, without the enforcers of the law, what do you do as an educated person? With an open mind that I talked about at the opening of my presentation. With us, we find it easier to cast blame on others, but it's time we change ourselves as we continue to change others through debate. Uganda is one of the highest, is one of the most blessed countries in the world. But interestingly, we are becoming very huge victims of environmental mismanagement. Uganda is losing its forest cover at a very high rate. According to the research done in 2018 by Gladys N, the forest cover has reduced from 24% of the land area of Uganda in the 1990s to 9% at present. You, the young people who are to be in charge of the country tomorrow, are very much in great danger. You need to start now to transform your own environment. We, the educated, must be practically involved in restoring and protecting our environment. The harsh effects of environmental degradation are already upon us, and it is our responsibility to act as educated Ugandans. All of us must be aware that the environmental disasters in our country may worsen if nothing is done. But I thank the Almighty God, and with the conscience that knowledge is power, now that we know, you know what to do. Let us start to reverse the trend for the better. I appeal to you that education be our inspiration so that we avoid irresponsible disposal of harmful material and we embark on reforestation for our future to be good for all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, it should be noted that the debate offers numerous benefits, and as I said, the benefits should translate into character transformation and development. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, highlight a few, though often obvious, benefits of debate. Debate improves our communication skills. It boosts our social and intellectual confidence. It enhances our ability to articulate ideas very competently with well-structured arguments. With this kind of blessing from debate, do we need to fight? A few debaters here I heard were commenting on rioting and so on. If you can engage the brain, Do you need the muscle to substitute the brain that is taking things upside down? If you are a debater, then you have a sharp tool already, and you don't need to abandon it. Debate sharpens our decision-making abilities because it involves critical thinking. It builds teamwork and collaboration. You could have seen this year. Even with those who hold divergent views. You can have an opponent and you are able to engage them and work with them through debate. Additionally, debate promotes persuasive speaking, helping us to win others over to our own point of view. In this sense, debate should be for you a tool for promoting peace and resolving conflicts. It teaches us to manage emotions and engage in dignified discussions, because there are always rules of debate. In fact, when you see people here debating, it gives you an impression of a court session where we settle disputes without fighting or taking to pieces. I therefore implore you to remember that your country may be more peaceful through your own engagement of debate, because it sharpens your brain, opens your brain into more critical thinking and negotiation. Now, for you, the young generation, debate offers an opportunity to develop skills that will make you outstanding candidates in academic interviews, in job placements, and leadership roles. Debate can enhance your promotional prospects by equipping you with negotiation and leadership skills. No doubt, if you can debate well and you continue to sharpen your own skill, you will of course be outstanding when it comes to competing for any senior positions. Even you know how politicians manage with voters. I urge you, ladies and gentlemen, to broaden your understanding of leadership. Kindly do not narrow your view of leadership to political offices. That is why we have very abnormal competitions, including corruption and bribery of voters. And we end up complaining. And the most brilliant minds, which may not be backed by big passes, will end up losing, and the country will lose the best of us. Now, don't limit your view of leadership in terms of political leadership. Leadership is not about occupying a top position. It is about positively influencing society to bring about desirable change wherever you are. Maybe I pose this as an option. In your own families, look back. In your own homes, some of you might be leading when you have your parents alive. How? When you present sharp ideas, the family can adopt them, and then you are living in that way. Debate should equip you to become leaders in that kind of fashion. Don't limit yourselves to competing for political offices. The real movers and influencers in society are not always those on top, but those who lead with purpose and integrity. Allow me to underline the word integrity. Maybe I refer slightly to the place where I work. Just in a split minute. I cherish 5 core values that are always inspiring for all to read, but which we also struggle to inculcate in the minds of everybody that goes through our hands. 1 core value for mankind, at least in the context of Uganda, is the fear of God. The next is respect for humanity. Doesn't matter how you are born, how you look, your economic status. The moment we Now let me broaden it. We Africans learn to respect humanity. We might develop better. And this will be achieved through debate because we respect one another as we engage in this discussion. 3, integrity. Maybe this is for you. Those of you who are looking for jobs tomorrow. When you are looking for a job in Uganda and world over, this is a global skill. The other day I heard that, no, I read in the papers that at Shambogo University, 500 students obtained the first class degrees. First class 500 in one cohort of graduates. It may mean that first class may no longer be an issue. But you are lucky, you are debaters. Sharpen your mind, open your mind, and become ladies and gentlemen of integrity. Should I tell you the best degree? Which is about first class? Integrity. Integrity is emphasized in my conclusion here because it touches the fight against corruption. The moment any organization establishes that you are a person of integrity, you will become irreplaceable. First class or no first class, integrity is a degree higher than any first class. That will work for us as Ugandans. The fourth value is solidarity, working together in harmony. And the last is self-pride. How many of us can be employed and they work sustainably and for prosperity without being supervised or monitored? Uganda has reached a level of planting CCTV cameras such as the one I see in the corner of this hall, because there is no trust that one can drive oneself throughout the course of operation. And that point towards corruption, you are debating here, but where is the magic bullet to fight these problems that are challenging you, especially as you attain education, almost with frustration, because you may think that even after your degree, you might never get where to work or what to do. But remember, be productive, be self-driven, work with integrity. Every establishment will run down to you. A work with the greater good, striving to lead others to a higher level of understanding and progress. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I submit that all of us, including us of the higher generation, because we are getting old, are soon off the arena. As leaders of institutions, I am not sure how many of us are teachers and even head teachers, but carry the message. Must prize and support debate as a means of adding value to our children's education. We support debate as a means of shaping the character of the young people. We support debate as a means of fostering harmony, promoting leadership skills, and ultimately contributing to the development of our country, Uganda. For God and my country, I wish you the best.
Come on, give Mr. Kimisiwe another big round of applause. Surely, we made a very good choice. We made a very good choice. So every year, we look around, eminent people making sound contribution in education and invite them to speak to you. We select them very carefully. And we are honored to have listened from a man I have known for a very long time. I met him at the beginning of 2009 and we have worked together. When in Barara, I do all my meals in his house. So it's been more than just a colleague, but a brother, and a big brother at that. I've learned quite a lot from him, and I know you have picked quite a bit from his submissions. Let's thank him again. So as we move to the beginning of the close, on my right, as you can see, the tables are getting more flooded, and by the time we are done with this, none of those things will be on that table. They are all for you. But please allow me to recognize a few people. I would like to recognize, for purposes of our chief guest to see, all teachers, school administrators, and directors. I'm aware that we have some directors who did not delegate, but made their way here with their schools. If you're a teacher, a director, school administrator here, and you came with your team, please stand up so we can recognize you, and the chief guest can see you. Students, can you clap hard for these wonderful people? Mr. Chief Guest, as you have heard from the keynote speech, these wonderful ladies and gentlemen are the heartbeat of not just debate in their schools, but education in general. They determine the course of events. They have been here with us since Sunday. They have supported a great deal, and we are forever indebted to them. We are also joined by colleagues, NDC. So when NDC began, there was really not debate in this country. We just figured out things and began. But over the years, we have grown, become parents. We are now grandparents of debate, and so we have given birth to a lot of debate organizations and entities. And this afternoon we are joined by my young brother, Frederick Musimeta, who is the lead at Dialogue Arena. And I want to recognize him over there. Frederick is also an author of a debate book. I remember the first time he authored it, we had a bit of problems because it was the beginning, but now the book has kept on improving, and recently I just missed his launch because of an engagement, but should have been there. He recently launched his book, The Winning Debate. You may want to talk to him after the event and probably grab yourself a copy of that book. I also saw friends from UAP on Mutual. They have a tent out there. It is never too early to start ensuring yourself your education, so you can visit their tent and see what they do. Now, before I invite the person I want to invite the chief guest, I want you to understand where we have come and probably where we are going with the Parliament of Uganda. So we strategically reached out to the Parliament of Uganda in 2010 and thought that as a supreme institution for national debate and dialogue, it was important for us to take you there and give you opportunity to start engaging with national leaders, to groom you for national leadership. Because you are